full aja. Oh iya, dia monggo gitu.
Followed by the second parallel session and closed by with the closing session. Now I invite everyone to stand up straight for our national anthem Indonesia Raya, followed by the ITS time. Followed by the second parallel session and closed by with the closing session.
Tanah air, karena Tuhan darah, di sanalah aku berdiri, jadi pandu hidupku. Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah air. Marilah kita bersatu, Indonesia bersatu. Hiduplah tanahku, hiduplah negeriku, bangsaku, rakyatku semuanya. Bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya, untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya.
Iya. Ada kamu jadi nggak fokus.
Manusia
I would like to invite our Honorable Mr. Herman Praktikno, PhD, as the Chairman of SENTA 2022 to give their welcoming remarks.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me in this opportunity to welcome all of these conference participants by first praying our grateful and praise to the Almighty God for all His blessing, grace, and mercy that have made us possible to gather here in this room in excellent condition and health. Thank you for the presence of Rektor ITS, Prof. Dr. Insinyur Muhammad Asari M.Eng, Dean of Faculty of Marine Technology ITS, Dr. Eng Tri Kapitana STMSC, keynote speaker, Sabiar Agote, founder and president of Al-Baula Itsas Kultur Factoria Spain, Prof. Dr. Mazlan Abdul Ghaffar, Institut of Tropical Aquaculture and Fisheries University Malaysia Terengganu, Malaysia, and online Prof. Richard Bigrigam, Professor of Small Craft Design, Marine Offshore and Subsea Technology School of Engineering, Newcastle University, UK. We also like to extend our appreciation to the sponsor, PT PP Construction, PT Pelindo, and WIKA for supporting SENTA 2022. Last but not least, thank you to all of distinguished guests and participants of the 7th International Conference on Marine Technology SENTA 2022 held under the theme Sustainable Development and Innovation in Marine Technology for a Post-Pandemic Era. Institut Teknologi 10 November ITS is very pleased to host this conference in Surabaya. Welcome to ITS Kampus. Welcome to Surabaya City. I especially thank the organizing committee for their hard work, perseverance, and passion in preparing and organizing this seminar so that it can go well, smoothly, and successfully. Finally, through this conference, let us extend the network and cooperation among all stakeholders of the marine technology sector, especially in Indonesia and in the world in general, to build a better maritime world in Indonesia. To all of our keynote speakers, distinguished guests, and participants, thank you for being here. Welcome and enjoy the conference. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Herman, for the wonderful speech. Now I would like to invite Dr. Tri Kapitana as the Dean of Martech to give his welcoming remarks.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Rector of ITS, Professor Muhammad Asari, Head of Ocean Engineering Department, Herman Praktikno, PhD, Head of Marine Engineering Departments, Dr. Beni Cahyono, distinguished keynote speakers, Professor Dr. Mazlan Abdul Ghaffar from University Malaysia Terengganu, is also as the Vice Chancellor of UMT, Mr. Kabir Agote, founder and president of Al-Baala Itsas Kultur Factoria Spain, and also Professor Richard Birmingham, Newcastle University, which is not possible to come and will be attend online. Distinguished lecturers, contributing authors, seminar delegates, experts, scholars, all students, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I will come to the opening ceremony on the 7th International Conference of Marine Technology. And I would like to thank to all of you for participation in SENTA 2022. SENTA is basically stand for International Conference of Marine Technology. And during 2020 until 2021, this seminar previously conducted online due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, this is the first seminar international seminar in our faculty, which is held offline. I am delighted to see that many participants whom I know have a high academic and professional reputation. And I'm pleased and honored to join you during the opening this seminar. I wish to warmly thank our hosts for their dedication in preparing important international seminar, and notably Chairman of SENTA 2022, Herman Pratikno PhD, and all local and international organizing committee. The topic of SENTA 2022 is sustainable development and innovation in marine technology for a post-pandemic era. I believe that this is a very interesting topic actually, and we had passed pandemic COVID-19 for 2 years, from 2020 until 2021. Therefore, it is necessary to create technology and innovation which is suitable for a post-pandemic era. This seminar has a significant meaning for ITS, especially all departments in Faculty of Marine Technology. We do hope this seminar will become an important benchmark for the development of new interdisciplinary approach in the region in the field of marine technology, consisting resilient and sustainable shipbuilding, design and production, autonomous technology to enhance sustainable marine infrastructures, ocean environment and renewable energy, ocean engineering, shipping, port and maritime logistics, maritime development and sustainable ships transport technology using alternative fuels, as well as any related marine technology fields. This seminar is conducted annually, and this is the 7th international seminar, which 7 years ago is basically was national conference. Eventually, the level of seminar raised to be international conference. Several seminars basically in 2021 is already published in Scopus, Pak Rector. We do hope that this forum is more focused on creating and expanding professional network to foster the relation between the university, industries, business, and community across the country. Last but not the least, sincere appreciation is expressed to all speakers contributing to our conference. Special thanks also to all keynote speakers and all committees for the effort in preparing the manuscript, presentation, and managing the session respectively. Wish the seminar complete successfully. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
All right, thank you, Dr. Trika Kapitana, for the amazing speech. Now I would like to invite Professor Muhammad Asari as Director of ITS to give his welcoming remarks.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Pak Herman, as the chairman of this conference, the Honorable Pak Dr. Trika, as the Dean of Faculty of MarTech, Marine Technology, and to also the excellency to our distinguished keynote speaker, Mr. Sabir Agoda, from founder and the president of Al Paula Itzas Culture Factoria from Spain. Thank you very much for visiting us and accepting our invitation to come this conference. Also, the Honorable Professor Maslan Abdul Ghaffar. Good morning. Thank you very much for coming to Surabaya. Professor Maslan is from the Institute of Tropical Aquaculture and Fishery, and also the Vice Chancellor of Universitas Malaysia, Terengganu, Malaysia. Thank you very much for coming here. And also attending this conference through online, Professor Richard Birmingham, a professor of small craft design, marine offshore and subsea technology, School of Engineering, Newcastle in UK. Also, all distinguished participants, our colleagues from ITS and also from other institutions who come in our conference. So everybody here, welcome to 7th International Conference on Marine Technology, SENTA 2022. So welcome to Surabaya as well. Probably our guests, I don't know, maybe this is the first time to come Surabaya, to come Indonesia probably. So welcome. Our campus at the moment, we have a special flower, which is we can see in surrounding the campus. We call it tropical sakura because it's only during almost 2 weeks only. After that, disappear. This tropical sakura or tapibuya, we can also see around the city. So please come together with the committee. Probably we have a look around the city, around the campus, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, so thank you very much for the committee to arrange this conference. And according to Pak Dean of Martech, we call it Faculty of Martech, Marine Technology. The short name, the nickname is Martech, Marine Technology. Also, the other faculty, we have a nickname like Electric, Faculty Electric, Intelligent, Electrical, and Informatics Technology. Scientists, Faculty of Science and Data Analytics, some kind like that. So at the moment, ITS, Institut Teknologi Sepuluh Nopember, this institute was established in 1960 by the first president of Indonesia, President Soekarno. And during that time, in 1960, this university to be plotted, to be designed as the best in marine technology in Indonesia. So since 1960, so thank you very much for all the colleagues here that we always maintain from the founder of ITS that we also keep on the track the development of technology, especially in marine technology. At the moment, ITS, we have 26,000 students, 7 faculties, including Faculty of Marine Technology. This faculty, I mean, Faculty of Marine Technology, we have contributed in some kind of field in Indonesia, like our college here, we have revised or modified a ship, yeah, in 2012. I think this is the first time the type of ship. Usually a ship dedicated for passenger, dedicated for container, etc. but our colleagues here in 2012, we modified 2 ships in Indonesia into 3-in-1s. So we have a ship especially for passenger, for container, and also for apa satunya itu barang ya, cargo ya. So 3-in-1s. And now, thank you very much for PT Pelni, who come back again to our campus, that very keen to modify another more than 16 ship into 3-in-1 or 2-in-1s, because this kind of design it's very give benefits to the company. And the other one, very proud that Faculty of Marine Technology already to help our government to design and implement tourism ship, especially in Bunaken dan apa itu Labuan Bajo, ya Labuan Bajo. So if we come travel there for visiting tourists, tourism, we can try to ride this ship. It is apa namanya glass wall, so glass bottom of the ship, and during traveling from the island to Labuan Bajo to see apa Biawak itu Komodo ya, because we need at least 3 hours by ship from our place to the island of the Komodo. Yeah, so enjoy there. Our colleagues has contributed to design. The other one, the contribution of Faculty of Marine Technology of ITS to Indonesia in the IT technology, because just now Pak Dean and Pak Head of Department said that the diversification of marine technology is also including the digital technology, also renewable energy technology included in the marine technology. And we have already ITS supported by Faculty of Marine Technology. We have launched an autonomous longboat that without a driver, without the mankind inside, so we can drive this ship according to the coordinate that we put it. So this especially for a small island in Indonesia during the apa itu di dalam badai for yeah, so we can send any logistic to a small island in Indonesia without worried about the safety of the people, because no people inside. It's only the logistic. Yeah. We have already launched this autonomous ship in Selat Madura. And the other one, the contribution of our Faculty of Marine Technology is ICE-ITS, apa itu? Automatic Identification System, ITS. This is a kind of hardware and software combination for tracking the ship, but not only that, but also this kind of equipment included the database of underwater pipe, like gas pipe, oil pipe underwater, and when the ship is on the top, on the surface, so it keep the safety. Yeah, so we can monitor and give an early warning system for the ship when the ship is passing any underwater pipe. Yeah. this system is already implemented in many places, like in Balikpapan, in Pertamina. Yeah, thank you very much for our colleagues from Faculty of Marine Technology, ya, Pak Ketut Buddha ya, di antaranya, for this initiation and also for this development. The other one is our colleagues, Pak Yoyo ada di sana ya. He developed ISTO. This is a kind of software to arrange the cargo, the container on the ship. So because this is not only just place it, but also to calculate with a complicated equation. I know the inside there, because this is considering the stability of the ship when working around the ocean. So using this software, it is already certified by international body and already already used in some company, including Departemen Pertahanan Republik Indonesia. Yeah, so this is one of our contribution, our colleagues from Faculty of Marine Technology to Indonesia, and also business in the world. So again, we would like to thank for all participants and also our distinguished speakers. We hope that with this conference, we would get an insight, a new technology, a new initiative, new implementation, etc., that this will give us the prosperity for the society and also the contribution, especially to Indonesia. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you for the warm welcoming greeting, everyone. I would like to invite everyone to give a warm applause to all our honorable guests. Okay, now before we move on, I would like to invite everyone to document this lovely event today and have a photo session. So we will take the picture here in the middle, and to the people in the sides. Oh, gimana? Ganti, oke. Fotonya dari sini, jadi pindah ke situ. Oke. Mungkin untuk Bapak Ibu yang di samping kiri dan kanan bisa mengisi yang kosong dan mendepet lagi gitu, biar masuk semua. Iya. Ada itu. Sudah OTW. Iya. For coming here today. If you have any other agendas, you are welcome to leave the event. Okay. All right, we'll move on with our next agenda, the long-awaited wonderful presentations and discussion sessions by our keynote speakers. I would like to invite our moderator for today, Professor Daniel Muhammad Rashid, to lead the presentation of today's keynote session. I will read a bit about him. Professor Daniel is one of our professors in the Faculty of Marine Technology and majors in marine building construction, and is actively practicing as marketer and engineering, amongst other experience he has. He also has a certification as a professional marketer from World Marketing Federation. So to Professor Daniel, Mr. Sabir Agote, and Professor Abgafar, you can come up to the front of the podium. Yeah. Silahkan, Pak. All right, so to Professor Daniel. Okay. To Professor Daniel, the time is yours.
Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to be here to host you. We're going to have two speakers offline, and we will have Professor Richard Birmingham online later on. Saya senang sekali bisa menjadi tamu, menjadi tuan rumah, menjadi moderator di kesempatan ini. Kita akan mendengarkan dua presentasi yang menarik, saya kira. Perspektifnya, yang satu Profesor Mazlan dan berbicara di biology, karena beliau adalah seorang biologist. Yeah. So Professor Mazlan is a biologist, a senior biologist. He is also the Vice Chancellor of the University of Malaysia, Terengganu, in Malaysia. He has been doing lots of research collaboration with Indonesian universities, and he is very happy to be with us today. Professor Mazlan, of course, will provide us with a very academic approach to this topic. My other guest, Sabi, I call it Sabi. He's an old friend of mine. I met him in 2010 in Canada for a Atlantic Challenge event. So it's very practical. Yeah, it's not too academic, but I think he will give some insight how to see this marine technology issue, sustainability, and so on probably from a new perspective. Ya. Jadi saya pandangan-pandangan tentu nanti dengan pandangan Profesor Richard Birmingham, beliau juga sangat akademik. Saya kira ini akan memperkaya dari perspektif teknologi, biologi, dan kira-kira dari perspektif bengkel lah kira-kira begitu. Ya. Zabi is is very serious organizer. Al-Baula, he founded Al-Baula as a apprentice shop. Ya. Jadi Al-Baula ini satu setup yang berbeda dengan kampus memang. tapi dia adalah satu learning center for youngsters of any who comes from anywhere in the world, from Europe, from America, from Indonesia, because I went there before with some graduates of the marine engineering. Saya pergi ke sana dengan Onggo, mungkin ada yang kenal Onggo ya. Onggo is now is about to do master degree in Michigan University in Michigan. Ya. Jadi kita akan saksikan dua presentasi yang saya kira akan memperkaya perspektif kita yang selama ini bergerak di bidang teknologi, dan kita kalau kita bicara tentang sustainability, saya kira tidak mungkin melepaskan diri dari biologi, ya, dan juga some cultural environment, cultural ecosystem, ya. Jadi nanti mungkin Sabi will talk much more about the cultural ecosystem of technology. Ya, jadi karena teknologi tidak bisa timbul ujuk-ujuk, tapi dia harus, it has to be organically grow. Ya, jadi kalau teknologi yang tepat, yang sustainable, it has to be organically developed. Ya, tidak bisa dicangkokkan begitu saja, tapi it has to grow organically, ya, culturally as well. Ya. Bapak Ibu sekalian, itu sebagai pengantar. Saya kira waktu saya berapa menit ya? Waktu kami berapa menit? Mbak Tasya atau kami berapa menit? Masing-masing. Okay, so Professor Maslan, you have 30 minutes of presentation. I suggest that we have a panel, then followed directly by Sabi. Sabi will talk in 30 minutes as well. Then we have a question and answer session. Is that okay? Profesor Birmingham, pukul berapa beliau bicara? Ya, terakhir pukul berapa, saya ingin tahu supaya kita bisa atur waktunya. menit. Profesor Richard will be talking the last ya. Okay. Baik. So you have 30 minutes. You have 30 minutes, then followed by Richard. I will talk also in 30 minutes. Ya. Lalu kemudian kita diskusi gitu ya. Semua jadi setelah panel selesai berdiskusi ya. Oke, baik. Baik, saya kira kita akan mulai sesi kita. Silahkan, saya kira sesi kita sesi yang relax saja, silahkan. Jadi kita nikmati saja presentasi Prof. Maslan, ya, dan juga Sabi Agobe. Ya. Please, Profesor Maslan.
Okay. Terima kasih Pak Daniel, Pak Jawi. Okay. So, Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everybody. Alhamdulillah. Okay. First of all, I sense, my field of what I'm going to present here is quite different, from all of your field of research. I'm basically a biologist, but I integrate my expertise onto the climate and the food security issues. I think I have. Okay. Right. I'm presently working as a Vice Chancellor of. Yeah. Oh, I can control the slide. Okay. Sorry, I thought somebody controlling the slide. So how to do this one? Like this? Okay. No, it's okay now. Okay. And sorry. And where's the laser? No laser. Tak nampak di situ. Di sini nampak. Okay. Okay, myself actually now working as a Vice Chancellor of UMT. Before I working as a Deputy Vice Chancellor in Research and a Fellow of Academy of Science Malaysia, and also fellow members of several institute in UMT as well. So tak bergerak ni. Kenapa? Oh yeah. Mana sensornya? Okay, sorry. Okay, the title of my presentation today is synergistic impact of ocean climate change and and COVID-19. We can say post-COVID-19 pandemic on fisheries and aquaculture technology in Malaysia. Actually, this field of research actually is an emerging research, because this is very, very important to answer the United Nations SDGs, especially on the ocean science decades of United Nations, okay, for the sustainable developments. So for 2030 missions for the United Nations, in order to secure our food security, okay, that related to the climates, changing climates. As we all know, for the past few years and the past 3 years or 2 years, with coming of this pandemic, COVID-19 has been, impacting us a lot globally, not only us, everybody, every people in the world, they're relating to what they are doing, their daily work, no matters in marine technology, maybe, or in securing the food securities. Okay, maybe you cannot see my presentation. Yeah, right. So in Malaysia, aquaculture industry began in as early as 1920s. Okay, we are starting with the cow cultivation because we are close to China. In fact, China has been starting this aquaculture since 2000 BC, long time ago. Coming to Malaysia 1920s with a carp also, carp cultivation, and the mid 1930s begins with the shrimp, because we are the maritime countries, Malaysia, and the shrimp industries is very, very important too. So in early 40s, before the Second World War, the culture of the kerang, right, blood cockles, kerang began, and of course, after the Second World War, in 70s, starting with the semi-intensive culture of the shrimp in Johor, and of course, developed until now. In 1920s and 2000, in the millennium, the technology of aquaculture, developed very, very fast in Malaysia. Okay. Right. So through this, if you happen to visit Malaysia, maybe through Johor, you will see this kind of structures. You will see this kind of structures where where the small house in the middle of the sea, in the strait, in Johor, for example, you can see a lot of these aquaculture structures. And of course, nearby the island, in Kedah also, in Langkawi, for example, you can see a lot of cage culture for the marine species, especially the barramundi, and of course the groupers with a very high price. Yeah. All right. So this is very, very important, not only for the export, but also for the local domestic consumptions. All right. Overall decrease in edible fish production by -2.1 in 2020 and 2021, for example, by increasing demand of the fish as a major food. Because, for example, in Malaysia, people consume fish about 30 kilo per capita. The highest fish consumers in the world is Japan, about 50 to 60 kilos per capita, per head, right? Then that means the increased demands of the fish as a source of health food as compared to the meats in poultries. Right. So increase in the value of the overall fisheries, because high demand means increase in value of the fish and in the market. That costs, around in 2021, I get 14.88 ringgit Malaysia billion for increase in terms of demand. And of course, this is something to very basic economy with the supply and demand in economic, okay, like that. Yeah. Okay. Right. So why is it so important in terms of, we want to correlate with the supply chain during the pandemic, for example, when there is no people allowed to work on the ground. Okay, but Malaysia government they give a special approval to the people who work that related to food supplies. Okay, especially in the aquaculture, but limited access, not all as usual, open as usual. Okay, so supply chains in aquaculture, for example, from the hatchery, from the feed mill, for the farm, for processor are all interrelated. That also require the technology, for example, development, and of course, with the demand increase, and for example, in seafood production, from 2019 to 2030, that if we want to match with the demand for the food supply or food security that established by the United Nations in ocean decades for the marine science, for the food security, we need to have 62% in increase for the food, for the fish production in aquaculture, as compared to the different kind of the farming, for example, in poultry, other than fish. Okay, because fish, the food consumption ratio to the FCR, food consumption ratio, is the lowest compared to others, meaning that in terms of the feeding efficiencies and the production of meat ratio is lower compared to others. So you need shorter time, right? Then, yeah, this is want to show you the current developments of the ITs, IoT, for example, Internet of Change, okay, and also AI, artificial intelligence, that related again developed in parallel to the technology in aquaculture in order to reduce the labor in the field, replace with the electronic things in order to do the same thing and more efficient. Okay, and of course, related to the response of the current issue, global issue of the climate change, where in fish, for example, those who are cultured in captivity are very, very highly susceptible to the changing climate, because they cannot run away to their favorable place. They have to, face the stress factors that implicate by the climate extreme, okay, extreme weather, something like that. So this is very, very important. That, for example, just imagine the fish culture in this case in the open ocean, due to climate change, they cannot run away. They have to, they have to suffer this. And of course, in terms of monitoring of the weather and how to reduce the stress is very, very important by developing the AI technology in order to sense them, how they behave in the cage and so like that. So I just came from Jeddah to visit the largest aquaculture company in Arab Saudi. They call it Nakwa. They have this kind of technology where they can sense when the fish hunger to feed, when the fish stress, they can send it through AI or from remotely, not on the sites. So which is very important for this, right? And then, of course, through this current issue, we can see, from the news, CNN news, BBC news, in Europe now, I think Mr. Jabi also experiencing a very extremely heat. Yes, in Europe, it's not usual, it's unusual. Very, very hot. This is the signs of the changing climate that also impacting. We just see how it impact the people who run the farming, fish farming, for example, in the Mediterranean Sea. In the cage, we can, every moment we can see how they suffer this in terms of the production. Of course, it will impact the life of the captured organism in anywhere, in the cage or something like that. So this is very important to know how to respond with this changing climate and related to the fish production, where the topic that I present today. Okay, so yeah, this is all about the heat wave, that giving a very, very serious impact to the peoples around the world, and of course to their business, to their what they are doing every day, daily doing, and of course the heat in Southeast Asia also, like, for example, there, including Malaysia, Indonesia, or like that. It's very, very tremendous, you know. And of course, in Japan, recently, so many people die because of the heat wave to the elderly in Japan too, right? Okay. This is something to do with the El Nino, ENSO, El Nino solar installations, you know, that come every 10 years. It's a cyclical event in the Indian Ocean. Of course, the Indonesians suffered the most for this ENSO. Okay, then of course this impact, of course, I run it very quickly on the human health. In fact, Malaysia is hosting, we call it the Lancet countdown, that involving, because you know the journal, the Lancet journal, with very highly impact factor journals, the medical journal, mostly reported how the human health impacted by this climate change. So that normally every year we host, now it's the third time we host the Lancet countdown, Malaysian chapters, in order to highlight 120 scientists from around the world doing research on the impact of the climate change on the human health. Okay, right. So it may be too hot by 2100. So what happened? What's going to happen next if we didn't take a special measures on developing the technology in order to help us, you know, easing the problem in the future? All right. So what happened actually? You know, tadi Bapak Rektor, Bapak Syahri mentioning about the tourists. Indonesian is very highly potential for tourists, for the marine tourists that exploring, like, you know, if you go to Manado, you cannot miss the Bonacan Island, for example, when you go to Manado, which is very, very important in tourist. But you developing the glass bottom boat, as mentioned by Pak Rektor just now, which is very important for tourists, not only going into the boat, but also will see what is underneath the boat, you know, to see the beautiful corals or whatever, which is very important, without going down for snorkeling. Just sitting on the boat and you can see the coral. If not, you have to go down and snorkeling, which is very dangerous, and of course give some impact onto the corals as well. See? So this is the thing that, you know, the present challenge that include the ice sheet melting in the polar region and Antarctic and polar region. Also, something to do with the oceanification, increasing input of the carbons into the ocean systems, and of course, loss of habitat. And of course, in Indonesia, you can see from Kalimantan, the annual problem of the peak swamp fire. The hotspots is a very, very important, and that cause, we call it what, Jerebu? Yeah, around the ASEAN countries, due to the peak fires, okay, or bushfires, okay. This is very important. Of course, biologically, they trade all the species, including the aquatic and terrestrial species of animals, right? Okay, right. So during high temperature, for example, you can see aquatic ecosystem, so many river dry in Europe, dry up. Okay, and of course, it loss of habitat and impacting their living, you know, all the lives in the systems. This is Sungai Temelo, which is very, very important for catfish production. Because of the river dry, the catfish down dramatically. Okay, then of course, fish are very, very susceptible to the changes of temperature because they have high metabolic rate, and the high temperature that cause high metabolic rate, and of course DO, dissolved oxygen depletions in the aquatic ecosystems, that, you know, that give, you know, that can cause the fish kill. We call it a massive fish kill when this happens, right? Also happen in Strait of Johor, basically, when they're high in temperature, that will trigger the blooming of the toxic algae. We call it harmful algae bloom, that major cause of fish kills, okay, in the cage, right? So high mortality of fish, you can see that. Masses of fish killed in the Strait of Johor before, and any other places that due to the high temperature. Okay, right. So biologically or ecologically, you can see how the high increase in temperature that impacting the so many system, like this is a newspaper cutting, that I managed to collect that related to higher in temperature risk and the risk to the animals, to the all living things, in the oceans. Okay, and of course, this is our new building, established at UMT in order to doing more high impact research related to the climate or changing climate onto the aquatic ecosystem by investigating their physiological adaptations to the IPCC parameters. You know IPCC? The Intergovernmental Climate Committee that looking into the response of, including the human response and also the animal response to the changing climates. So I managed to develop this lab in this building, actually this new building, in order to investigate further on the micro changes, physiological changes of the tested organism onto these IPCC parameters. Okay, so this is part of our result, just to share you the result. Maybe you don't understand because you are technologists, but basically, this is just to show how the animal respond due to the changing temperature. We just made a simulation, extreme simulation, lower and higher simulation, extreme simulation in response by the organism that we test. Okay, so this is the results. High temperature induced for the habit groupers, ikan kerapu. Then that caused an increase in methylation rate, increase in the oxygen demand, increase in ammonia secretion, and increased cost of the living. Because in captivity, when you keep groupers in higher temperature, it will increase the ammonia release that cause them, give them a very bad health for the fish in the captivity, right? So this is also very, very important finding, and we managed to publish this in high impact factor journals too. Okay, so the same on the that can cause a alter in liver muscle protein. We very deep inside we study, okay, to the level of physiology and their proteins, energy for growth, demand for energy for growth, or things like that. So this is the thing. This is in terms of how the temperature influencing the environment, acidic environment or alkaline environment and neutral environment. So this is the thing that we tested in our lab. Okay, to the level of this histology, looking after what changes happen to their gill structures, for example, in some, due to the increase in temperature for that alter the gill plasticity in the carps, in ikan jalawat lah, in the freshwater fish, where we tested the high temperature, what happened to the gills and so on. This is the thing that, through the naked eyes, we just can see their fish mortality. Fish dead everywhere. But what happened inside them? This is happening. That alter their plasticity of the gill and so on due to this. This is further same studies. Right. Also, kalau ada diabetic, we test the glucose. Alright. For fish, high temperature induce the plasma glucose formation inside their body, which is also not good for their health. Right. So this is the thing that micro investigation on this will help us to understand more on the impact of this changing temperatures in the environment. Okay, so this is the thing, the same thing. Even the spawning performance also impacted due to increase in temperature. Spawning performance. I don't know what happened to human. Okay, right. So this is the thing. All this, including the crustacean, the crabs, the shrimp, we test all in captivity in our labs. Okay, so this is the thing that further on the crabs, thermal tolerance, how they, because crab is the most, for example, ketanipa atau ketanipa. Tahu ketanipa, the mud crabs. Maybe Mr. Zabi don't know about the mud crab. They live in the mangrove. They can tolerate the high temperature in the water, also outside the waters. Dua alam, yeah. Okay. So we also test on them, on the brachian crabs. Okay. And of course, the challenge during the COVID-19, Malaysia is very strict on during the MCO. People cannot be present on the streets. But for the food security, for the food related production, they are allowed with a limited numbers access. During the for example, to harvest the fish and the market change, where for the distribution of the fish to the market or to the for the export, that they are allowed, but very limited numbers of access. And of course, until now, Malaysia, still have about 2,000 cases and 1 or 2 deaths per day. Yeah, not so many. Last time it was up to the 12,000 new case and accumulated to a few 100,000. Yeah, right. I think Spain is worse, Mr. Jabi? Yeah, worse. Yeah, in Europe. Yeah, of course. Right. Then the impact of this C19 on the aquaculture, of course, is undeniable. In terms of the operation activities, production, and whole supply chain also impacted. Okay, this is the thing that that changed thing a lot, to the people. Right. So we can see that based on our survey, how it impact, in terms of because of this MCO, right? To this, and we supply, and our student, of course, study this, how to this impacting the food supply chains in Malaysia. Okay, and then of course this is the result of our survey. People are not very happy, of course, because of their decision. Okay, of course, everybody is not happy actually, cannot go outside, and in terms of sales services, also very highly impacted, and of course financial assistance also. Okay, right. So as to close my presentation, while researching short-term CCA effect on climate change adaptation efforts, and this model can be used as a long-term mitigation measures towards sustainable in aquaculture production and any food production, including also agriculture. Yeah, we have to think along this line. And then, of course, the development of the technology, especially on the computer, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, in this to integrate with this kind of business, of course, it's very, very pertinent. And of course, in order to facilitate in terms of labor use and also efficiency of the production, okay, in the future. And under this pandemic and post-pandemic situation, financial package simulation is needed by the government in order to reduce the pressure of the micro, small, and medium aqua farmers, agriculture farmers, and facilitating operation in order to ensure the operation continuously form or thing like that. This is very, very important for this. Okay. Then I think that's all from my presentation. Why the slide not moving now? Okay. Yeah, recently I received a big grant from our government. It was about 3.5 million in order to investigate on the ocean climate change, potential risk, impact, and adaptation towards marine and coastal ecosystem services in Malaysia. So part of the result, just initial result I presented today is part of our finding through this big grant. That now I'm the heading program, leader of the program, and from our two other universities in Malaysia, from University of Malaya and also from University of International Islamic Universities in Kuantan, something like that. So this is our partner doing this kind of research. Okay, so I think that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a very enlightening presentation from Mazlan. Satu presentasi yang menarik mengenai pengaruh kenaikan temperatur pada budidaya laut. Ya. Our next presentation would be Sabi Agote. Please welcome him. Ya, tepuk tangan untuk beliau. Ini satu perspektif yang berbeda. It's going to be a different perspective. We have enjoyed the biological perspective of the post-COVID issues, and now we are going to see Sabi presenting his presentation. Please continue, Sabi.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for welcoming me, inviting me here. Thank you to ITS. And also thank you to Professor Rashid for introducing me to ITS. So that's why I'm here. I'm going to talk to you about technology, but not modern technology, but old technology. But definitely what I'm certain of is that having the knowledge of the old technology is going to inspire us towards the development of new technologies. It gives us lots of perspective. I'm a shipbuilder. When I was a child, I was passionate by wooden boats that they were disappearing. You know, I was very sad because for some reason that I don't know, I loved these wooden boats very much. I used to go every day to see the fishermen going in and out in these fantastic boats. And when I was a teenager, like 45 years ago, I witnessed how these boats were being replaced very quickly by fiberglass boats. Okay, so our heritage was vanishing. So that's why I decided that I would be a boat builder, to build the boats that nobody wanted. Doesn't make much sense. It didn't make sense at home, but you know, they say, how I going to make a living if nobody wants these wooden boats? But never mind. I tried to find a place to learn at home. It was impossible. All the shipyards closed. So fortunately, I found a fantastic boat building school, the apprentice shop in the United States, in Maine. So I went there. I started to learn boat building because, you know, it's something that you keep learning all your life. But in the same time, something that I learned, and it was unexpected, I learned that in the United States, in New England, people love maritime heritage, that they keep building wooden boats for just, you know, the pleasure of it. It's fantastic. It's a great place. So I got inspired and I said, well, this is what I should do at home when I go back home. So I'm the founder of Albaola, which is a maritime heritage society in which we basically study all technology, and we use that knowledge to build faithful replicas of historical boats. Okay. So today I'm going to present you a very special boat, but before that, since I'm here, okay, I decided to start with just few images, and this is very important for me because this is a ship, is the Victoria. You know, you heard of the Magellan expedition, you know, that went to the Moluccas exactly 502 months ago. Well, finished the first circumnavigation of the world. We celebrated that 2 months ago at home. Because you see, the Magellan, he was credited for this first circumnavigation, but you know, he never made it. Actually, his goal was to arrive to Indonesia, to Tidore, actually, and he never made it because he was killed in the Philippines. All right, so it was Captain Juan Sebastián Elcano. He was someone from my region. That's where I come from the Basque region. And he was a Basque man like I am. And so I'm very proud of him because he is the one that when he arrived to Tidore, and he became very good friend with the Sultan. The Sultan and the local sailors provided him with all the advice that he needed to successfully return home, circumnavigating for the first time the globe. So this is a decision that was taken in your country, you know? Even if the credit is for Juan Sebastián Elcano, you should, you know, be aware that he did it because he got very good advice, and also because the Sultan provided him with 12 sailors, okay, to help him, because he wanted to make sure that he will come back in a next trip, okay? He tried, but he died 3 years after that. Juan Sebastián Elcano died in the Pacific, trying to return back to Indonesia. Okay, but I'm not here to talk about that. Well, this is the circumnavigation very quickly. This is Tidore, which I visited 4 years ago. Fantastic. Oh, yeah, beautiful country. And I was welcomed by the Sultan, who was very nice to me. And this is the arrival of these guys. You know, when after 3 years, you need to know that when he left Tidore, he went straight home, 9 months without supplies. So like in the last stretch, many sailors, almost every day someone died of exhaustion or whatever, you know, all kinds of sickness. But to me, when I read the first circumnavigation, when I read maritime history books, what I always thought is about how was that technology that made maritime history possible? How were these ships? How were the boats? What shape, what architecture, how they used to build them, which materials, okay? So fortunately, when I was about to go to study boat building to the United States, I came out with this National Geographic issue of 1985, in which you can read there 16th century Basque whaling in America. Okay, I'm from the Basque country in Spain, okay? It's a specific region. We have our own language, and the Basque country was highly specialized in shipbuilding. Why? Because we had all the materials necessary to build the best ships. And actually, in the time in which 500 years ago, in which Spain was the most important empire of Europe, 80% of the Spanish ships were built in my region, okay? But how were they? How were the ships that came here to Tidore? How were they? We didn't know, because back then they built the ships without plans. The plans were in the heads of the builders. It was transmitted by father to son, okay? So it was not a graphic representation yet. So that's why when they discover this, they discovered the San Juan, which is this ship. They discovered the San Juan. And that's very important because, you know, when they found the ship in Labrador, which is, you know, very close to Newfoundland, they actually, they realized that it was the best preserved shipwreck of the 16th century ever found. And basically, because the ship sank in a very protected harbor, and also because the water is very, very cold. It's 2 degrees Celsius in the summer. Okay. So we were talking before about climate change. Something I can say is that 500 years ago, that part of the world and also Europe was much, much colder than nowadays, much colder. It was like a mini glacial era, okay? So I cannot imagine how tough it was for these people to go there because, you know, nowadays, today is very cold. It's very difficult to get there. So, but because of the cold, they realized that the timbers, you know, all the oak, it was built with oak tree, which oak is the best tree you can find in Europe to build ships. They were very well preserved. That was very, very important. And to have an idea how challenging it was to excavate this wreck, you can see that the diver is connected with a hose to the surface to provide him with hot water, because otherwise they couldn't work. They decided to take apart the entire ship. And we're talking about 3,000 timbers, remove them from the bottom of the sea and taken to the surface, and every single timber was recorded with all details. So that was very, very important. That was never done before in the history of underwater archaeology. And luckily, it was done in a ship from my country, in a ship, not only my country, my hometown. Okay, so that was fantastic. You know, for somebody like me that is passionate about wooden boats, to find this boat was something incredible. Okay, oh, too fast. Okay. Oh, all right. Okay, how deep? I don't know what's happening here. It became crazy. Okay, all right, okay. Well, it's only 10 meters. Yeah, that was an advantage. Yeah, but the thing is that, you know, they spent 8 summers taking apart the wreck. 8 years, but only in the summer, because the summer is very short, only 2 months, you know, and they were diving surrounded by chunks of ice, something amazing. Yeah, so it was very difficult. But the thing is, you know, they had to take apart every timber using this hydraulic crick, because at the time they used to nail all the timbers with iron nails, but also with wooden nails. The iron nails were gone, but the wooden nails were very solid. So they had to use that device to separate a little bit all the pieces and use that saw that you see there. Okay, this saw, maybe, yeah, okay, to cut all the wooden nails. Everything was taken to the surface. That was fantastic. And you can see that the almost 500-year-old wood was like intact. It was like nearly cut. You can see the tool marks. You can see everything. It was amazing. That's why it's the best preserved shipwreck ever found. This is an example of how every timber was recorded. Very interesting that we use these drawings nowadays. And with these drawings, these archaeologists, they made lots and lots of different models in different building stages, okay? To understand like a puzzle, you know, how it was built, how the ship was built back then, all right? So this is one of, I don't know, 20 or 30 different models that they made to finally make the plans, the drawings. And this is very, very important, because you have to understand that in a time in which there were not plans, not drawings, we only had some paintings, You know, there are paintings in the museums that give us an idea of what they look like. But finally, and for the first time, we know exactly the shape of these galleons. And these galleons are very important because these are the first transoceanic galleons ever built, okay? So it's top technology for the time. This is the section of this galleon. You see it's a 3-deck ship. And this is interesting because until this time, the galleons had only 2 decks. But you see, because they used to trade in coastal trading in Europe. And from the moment that they decided to go across the Atlantic Ocean to America, to Canada, and the sailing became very, very long, then suddenly they decided to add a 3rd deck, okay, because the trip was very, very long, so they decided to come back with as many goods as they could, all right, so to make more profit. Okay, so, but the purpose of this, this setting is this, you see? Because I didn't tell you, these guys used to go to Canada to hunt whales. They were the first whalers. It was the greatest specialty of my people, okay? The Basques were the first only whalers in Europe for many, many centuries, okay? And they used to hunt the whales very much like the La Malera whalers in Indonesia. And I'm convinced that we are connected, okay? La Malera, yeah, this is the only whalers in Asia, okay? Fantastic, I was there too. I visited this guy, he was passionate. I went with them on a boat, it was amazing. So these guys were looking for whale oil, and they were the only ones providing with this oil in the European markets. They use whale oil mostly for lighting. It was very, very clean because, you know, at the time where it was no electricity yet, they use mostly oil lamps for lighting. And most of the oil would smoke black and smell bad, but whale oil was very, very clean, very clean. So that's why the wealthy people would buy this oil to the Basque whalers all the time, and they made lots of money, taking huge risk. Finally, the Canadians, they spent 30 years researching the ship. So it was 8 years diving, plus 22 years in the labs, putting everything together with the aim to make that model. That was the idea, make a model. And because of this research, this ship represents all the underwater heritage at UNESCO. It represents all the sunken ships in the world that have any historical value. So that's very interesting. That's very, very interesting. So as I said, the Canadians decided to build this model, and that's it. That was the goal. So when I saw the report, I decided to build a faithful replica of this galleon, full size, okay? The Canadians didn't believe me. They thought I was dreaming. Yeah, because I didn't have no money, no connections, nothing, you know? But I'm very stubborn. So I decided to create Albaola, which is a maritime heritage society. And I was just by myself 25 years ago. And now we are 30 professionals. And we have a network of volunteers, like around 500 volunteers that help us a lot. And then we also, 5 years ago, we created an international boat building school as Professor Daniel mentioned before. And I'm very proud of that, because that boat building school, for me, is most important than anything else. Anything else is the most important project that we have developed, because you cannot preserve maritime heritage if you don't transmit the knowledge. Okay, the knowledge is very, very important. If you keep transmitting the knowledge, then is the best way to preserve maritime heritage, or any heritage, by the way. So here I am. Well, you see that dot, right? That's where I'm from. That's where the Victoria ship, the first ship that circumnavigated the planet, was built. And that's where he was born, Juan Sebastian Elcano, as well. Okay. Pasaya, yes, Pasaya, which is the historical port of San Sebastian. San Sebastian is the capital. Okay. If you like football, soccer, is Real Sociedad de San Sebastián. I don't know if you heard, but I know that many Indonesians follow European Spanish soccer. So now we are, yeah, Barcelona, yes, Barcelona is second and Real Sociedad is third. Not bad, because we have a much smaller budget. Yeah, Barcelona and Real Madrid, they very, very rich, and we are normal. Okay, so okay, so we are from there, and this is, well, an old picture of Albaola. This is when we started in 2014 before we were in a different location. This is an abandoned shipyard that we refurbish with some investments, and then, well, we built this wooden shed to build the replica of the San Juan galleon that you will see in a moment. Fortunately, I'm very happy to announce you that since then we had, some success. We are very happy because we get more and more visitors, and we get lots of media coming from all over the world. And so because of that, we have a grant of 2 million euros that we are expending now, improving these facilities and making them larger. Okay, so sorry, say again? How old? Oh, these facilities are from the 50s. Yeah, it's concrete. It's not. It's a concrete building that was abandoned 20 years ago. Yeah. Well, it's not there anymore, unfortunately. Yeah, it's in the ceiling. Yeah. I mean, I try to keep that tree for as. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we have quite a few at home. Yeah. So this is our facilities, and I'm gonna show you some pictures of the construction process. Okay, I'm gonna show you some pictures of the construction process, a little bit quick, because we started in 2014. Unfortunately, we had to stop for 2 years because of the pandemic, like most museums. But we didn't stop completely, because this is not our only project. With the school, we built many different boats from different periods, and during the pandemic, we built a very nice 18th century large 50-meter long rowing and sailing boat. Very nice, very interesting. But this is the San Juan, and you see, this is the keel, a very unusual shape. Okay, we're talking about technology, and usually the keels have a square section. It's very easy to make a keel. You run the log through the sawmill, and that's it. You have your keel in 10 minutes. Okay, but this is shaped by hand, and the keel and the first plank are together. Okay, it's like two pieces in one. The middle, there is a T section. Here, there's a Y section, and the same thing in the back. Okay, so we decided that we should build the replica exactly as the original. Okay, and also the Canadian government asked us to do so because this is what they call commemorative integrity. So yeah, after 30 years of research, if we have to reproduce something that comes from them, it should be done faithfully and respecting the research process. So, which is very interesting. Well, okay, this is a beach, but the rest, yeah, the rest is oak. Okay, so this is the original keel. Okay, we don't see very well because of the screen junction, but yeah, it's exactly the same one. And they were very excited because it was like the last piece removing from the bottom, of course, because it's in a butt. In Canada, yeah, this is in Canada. Everything is in Canada. No, it's in Labrador, further up. Okay, yeah, at the northern tip of Newfoundland. Okay, so yeah, this is some pictures of the construction of the replica. Very challenging, you know, because we are using the archaeological report, and okay, every day is a learning process because we know how to build wooden boats, but we didn't know how to build a 16th century galleon. All right, because different techniques. That's very interesting. So every day we are building the San Juan. We are learning about how our ancestors were facing the challenge of the ocean, okay? Because, you know, at home, our ocean is very rough, very rough. There are big waves like in Indonesia, okay? So there's, you know, the international surf contest that comes to Indonesia, they go to the Basque Country as well. We have big waves. So we needed very strong ships. All right, so I'm gonna pass some pictures. This is, you see, the belly is very, very big, and still we have to go all the way up to the roof because this is a merchant ship. It's the first transoceanic merchant ship ever built, this type of galleons. You see there's lots of visitors. They come in every day. We are located in a very industrial area with no tourism tradition at all, okay? And we attract, before the pandemic, we arrived to 65,000 visitors that they came to see us, which is, for us, is a lot. Maybe not for you because you are many people. So, you know, for us, 65,000 people is a lot of people at home, okay? And they come, you know, to see us from very distant places. So we are very happy. And this is some pictures of the interior, you know, as the ship is growing up. First deck, second deck very soon, you know. As long as we build the ship, we add ribs. You see the ribs on the side, we add them as long as we build the ship. This is how it was done. You know, in later times, like in the 18th century, all the frames were previously made entirely, all right, and then lift up. But here is not the case, so that's why we are building with the same chronology that they did back then in the 16th century. This is the second deck. It's a fantastic ship. It's a fantastic adventure. You see now we are reaching the ceiling. We don't see the lower part. Yeah, the highest part is 11 meters for a 27-meter long ship, which is not that long. Yeah, wooden nails and iron nails, the same technique we use, exactly. Yeah, you see the nails are handmade. A blacksmith makes them one by one. There are like thousands and thousands of nails and bolts as well. Now, you know, it's very funny because the top is very, very narrow. I don't know if you remember the section that I showed you before. a middle height is very wide, and then it keeps it keeps narrowing as long as they go up. Okay. Now, we already have covered all this. This is not the most recent picture. Okay, this is the boat building school, because we are building this galleon with our apprentices. This is, one of the classes. This is another area of the shipyard that you can see where we build different boats. And what is very interesting is that in 2015, the UNESCO gave us its patronage to the construction process of our galleon. It's the first time UNESCO has provided with that recognition to the construction of an historical ship. So we are very happy because of that. And now we are in contact with the Canadian Embassy because they are very interested. They're following the project because we are building this ship because they provided us with all the information, all the technical information. And now we are going to start very soon to organize the sailing across to Canada. Okay. It's going to be very interesting because the first research process was underwater, okay, was the archaeology. The second one was building the ship, because there is always some more things that you can came up with, because it's very different to do a research to make a model or to build the replica, okay? There is some small problems that you have to, discuss with the archaeologist. And now the third research program is going to be the sailing across to Canada on a ship, non-provided with any modern technology. We won't have any engine. I know how to sail like many people does, but nobody knows how to sail in a 16th century galleon, an authentic one with no engine. Yeah, and we are going to try not to replicate the sinking. We are going to try that, okay? We are replicating everything else because we are going to replicate the clothing that was found in the graveyards over there. They found many bodies and the remains of clothing. They found many tools. They found plenty of things. We are reproducing all the items. We are going to go back in time 500 years, and we are going to try to learn from the secrets of that galleon. Okay, that's very important. So, but that's another story. I will let you know in another presentation in the future after I came back from Canada, hopefully alive. Okay, so with this, that's it. Thank you very much.
You have a picture of the research ship that you built.
Yeah.
The research pictures. Completed one already?
Oh, no, it's not finished yet.
Oh, it's not
No, it's not
finished
finished.
yet.
It's finished in like 1 year or so of work. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for a very attractive presentation, study. It's different perspective, yeah, from the biologists and the other one from archaeologists. Yeah, we find a connection between them because it relates to woods, and woods is something which lives. Dari satu yang hidup juga dari marikultur, ya, aquaculture. We are going to have another presentation from Professor Richard Birmingham. Is he ready now? Hello, Richard. Good morning.
Good morning, Daniel. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you quite clearly. What's the time there in Newcastle?
Oh my goodness, it's 4:45 in the morning. And I've listened to both and greatly enjoyed both of the previous speakers. So well, including the speech from the rector as well. So I've been here for a little while.
Okay. Well, the time is yours now, Richard. You can begin your presentation.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'll share my screen in a moment, I hope, if I can make that work. But first, I'd just like to say thank you very much for the invitation to participate in SENTA 2022. It really is an honor and, as always, a pleasure. And I just mentioned that I've been here for both of the previous speakers and enjoyed them both hugely. They resonate, both speakers resonate with my own experience greatly. It might be of interest to Xavier Agote that I also started my professional career as a boat builder and worked for maybe 10 years as a boat builder, ending up teaching boat building in East Anglia at a small boat building school in the UK. So I was hugely interested, fascinated and impressed by the work that you're doing in Spain. It's a phenomenal project that you're undertaking. I also subsequently, once I became an academic, became head of the School of Marine Science and Technology. So I as head of the school, I bridged both those. So I also enjoyed the interesting presentation about aquaculture in Malaysia, and I'm very aware of the importance of that. It was interesting to hear how COVID has impacted on that. And I'm going to talk a little, well, my presentation will be about the impact of COVID. I would also like to just apologize for not joining you in person. I really wish I could be back in Surabaya again. Two things got in the way. One is my daughter is getting married in a week's time. And I think she would have been very distressed if for some reason I'd been stuck in Indonesia. I wouldn't have been distressed, but I'm sure she would have been. But also the other thing is the impact of, we all have to think these days about the impact of our activities. And so I was very aware that to come to Indonesia just for a couple of days, as I would have to be back here, would be a huge carbon footprint, which perhaps could be done in another way. And of course, that's one of the effects of COVID, is that we can do things in a new way now. And I'll explore that more in a moment in my presentation. However, I should say I do miss not being in Surabaya with you, especially as the rector mentioned the tropical sakura, was it? I'd have loved to be there to see that. So it's a pity I'm not there. My Professor Mohammed Ashari mentioned that ITS started in 1960. I was not there then, but I did first visit ITS in the mid-90s, at least 25 years ago. And I should say that it has been I've been hugely impressed over the years, seeing how ITS has grown and developed, so that so now it has achieved this fantastic, the stature that it has now achieved, and its international standing, and able to host international conferences such as this one. So I can really, I always like to support the activities of ITS, and as I say, I'm most impressed by the overall scope of things that are done at ITS. And I do hope that in the not too distant future, I'll be able to visit again in person and not virtually as I am now. Okay, let me try and see if I can work out how to share my screen. Let's try this one. Is that, yeah, that's looking. Okay. Right, I hope you can, let's just see. Oh, Daniel, I seem to have lost my, let me just see what happens. My apologies, this isn't going as well as I hoped. Let's try again. Right, good. Daniel, can you see that? Sorry, I can't hear you, Daniel. Is that, can you see that and can you hear me before I launch?
Your slides, and your voice is quite clear. Okay.
Great. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'll proceed. So, I am, just to introduce myself briefly, Richard Birmingham. As of a month ago, I retired from Newcastle University, but they kindly appointed me emeritus professor. So I continue my links with Newcastle University as an emeritus professor. What I want to talk about today in this presentation is the legacy of COVID for the development and innovation in marine technology. My apologies a moment. Yeah, that's better. Sorry, I'm just organizing my screen at this end. Yeah, so I'm really going to think about the legacy of COVID and how that has impacted or will impact on us as we go into the post-COVID era, as is in the title of this conference. So, by way of an introduction, I don't feel I'm any greater expert on this than any of those of you who are in the audience. We all lived through the pandemic, and so we all have huge personal lived experience, huge personal expertise on what the impact of COVID-19 was on us all. However, it's perhaps a little bit more difficult for us all. We all have our individual experiences, but to actually stand back and understand what we individually and our organizations that we work for have learned from this experience. And more than that, how it has changed the world in which we all live and work. So I'm trying in this address to reflect on that experience that we have all shared, but identify how things might change as we enter the post-pandemic era, how COVID has impacted on us and will continue to make changes for us in the future. As I say, I don't feel I'm a particular expert in this, so I'm not trying to instruct anyone here. What I'm hoping is perhaps to provoke a little bit of further discussion, and so in that way we will all gain insights into what the post-COVID era is going to look like. Okay, quick overview of where I'm going to go with this. We've already had the introduction. I'm going to look at the immediate impact of COVID-19, which we're all familiar with, I think, and so on. And then I've generated this thing that I like to call the COVID-19 paradigm. So I'll just introduce that concept. I would also like to then speak a little bit about how the COVID crisis hasn't appeared or isn't existed in isolation, but is combined with many other crises which are existential threats to our society, really. So we'll just look at this merging of different crises and then pick up on what are the lessons we've learned from COVID-19. And in a way, there's two ways to do that. One is to think about the immediate responses that organizations took during the pandemic, but then how those have evolved into the way we behave in the post-pandemic era, which I like to think is could be, it maybe isn't yet, but it could be a genuinely cultural transformation. And so that will be my final slide. So to go into that then, so the immediate impact of COVID-19 when it appeared out of the blue and hugely rapidly, all of a sudden, I was, in fact, not in Indonesia, but I was in Vietnam and then Australia just in January of that year. And then by February or March, such travel would have been completely impossible as the close down of everything happened. So let's just think about what those sort of immediate things that we saw happening were. I mean, and these are just the things that sort of caught my eye, if you like, when I was thinking back on it. And one of the things was all the how many the cruises, the cruise ship industry virtually disappeared for a very short while. All these cruise ships were laid up and not operating. Combined with that was the port closures. Sorry, I've just jumped ahead there. The port closures, which resulted in huge disruption as ports refused to let vessels of all sizes, from the little yachts that were stuck in the Pacific, unable to enter ports, through to these cruise liners and other vessels that couldn't go into port. We also remember that air travel almost shut down completely. In the shipping industry, the impact on that was that the shipping industry it was almost impossible to do the planned crew changes And that led to a crisis in itself as vessels that were at sea or unable to enter port were also unable to change their crews, so that seamen were stuck on their vessels for month after month after month, long after they'd expected to be back home with their families and so on. There were also another impact was that both sickness and, unfortunately, of course, deaths and the quarantines that were imposed led to a huge reduction in the availability of staff. So that most businesses were trying to operate with a depleted number of personnel, and that in fact went on in the longer term as many people reassessed their lifestyle, their work-life balance, and there were a lot of people who took early retirement. So that impacted as well in the slightly longer term. So those are just small things that we can immediately sort of remember that was going on at that time. But if we think on a wider scale, there was huge logistic disruption. That the supply chains were broken in many ways. There was, I've just got this picture here of the disruption in the container fleet, but this impacted in many ways, and in fact. The Vice Chancellor from Malaysia mentioned the fact that the supply chain impacted on aquaculture, and the export markets became unreachable and so on. So massive disruption in that way. And there were also huge unexpected costs which appeared in the form of losses, of course, for many organizations, and that in itself forced governments to step in to rescue many organizations from bankruptcy. It should also be noted, however, that there weren't only huge costs and losses, but there were organizations that made unexpected profits. Those in the personal protective equipment, PPE, of course, you know, had boom times for them, and so there were others who this COVID-19's impact was positive and not negative. So those are the immediate things that we saw happen. From that, I've sort of come up with this idea of the COVID-19 paradigm, and it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but still, what happened to us all? This is both individuals and organizations and society as a whole, that we had to learn to live with uncertainty in everything we did. It didn't matter what you were trying to organize, whether it was just a socially distanced picnic with your children, or the introduction of a new product, or in my case at the university, embarking on the next academic year. No matter what you were trying to do and how you planned it, you had to recognize that you had no certainty that it could be followed through, that plan could easily be disrupted as a new lockdown was imposed, as a new wave of the COVID came through. And so that uncertainty became a ever-present aspect of life. And so what I refer to, and so that meant that planning became, we continue to plan, we continue to look forward, but we never had huge confidence that those plans that we made would be able to be implemented. And to say that went from small things like meeting friends to large things like launching a new product and so on. And so as a result of that, I sort of thought, well, the paradigm was really, we had to live with and to expect the unexpected, that we didn't really know what the next day was going to bring, never mind the next week and the next month and so on. And so we had to plan for the unknown. And if you like that, during COVID-19, that was the way we had to operate. Okay, I think we should recognize, and really, I'm sure that much of the presentations that you're going to hear through the rest of the day will reflect this, that COVID-19 was not an isolated crisis. It emerged very rapidly and unexpectedly, or at least for many of us unexpectedly. I think those who are working in the world of viruses perhaps were just waiting for it to happen, but still for most of us it was unexpected. So it did emerge very, very rapidly, but it emerged alongside many other crises, all of which had and continue to have, or all of which pose and continue to pose a real threat to society in an existential way. And these have been playing out, were playing out prior to COVID, during COVID, and continue to play out as we go forward into the future. Perhaps not so rapidly as the way that COVID manifests itself, but and not so dramatically perhaps, but they are still moving forward and impacting on us. And of course, you know the climate crisis that I'm talking about here. So just, the obvious ones are the climate crisis, which has alongside it, the issue around the rising seawater levels, the water shortage, food security, and so on. All these impacts that the climate crisis is having on us. Linked to that, of course, is the energy crisis, as we have to transition from fossil-based fuels to renewable energy, and that in itself is creating a crisis. Also linked to the climate crisis is the migration crisis, manifesting itself both in terms of undocumented or movement of peoples as refugees and so on, but also in terms of documented and legal migration of people, which to a large extent during the COVID crisis, that movement is being shut down and reduced at any rate. And then the international tensions that have existed around the world for many decades, perhaps forever, but bubble up as real crises. Of course, we in Europe are very conscious that we are now have a war in our midst, the Ukrainian war, but that is only our new experience. Of course, this has been experienced in other parts of the world, Afghanistan, of course, Central Africa, and the tensions that are ongoing in China and Taiwan and so on. So these are crises that are ever present in some part of the world. So at the moment it is in Europe. And alongside that is as we become more and more dependent on technology, so the threat of cyber terrorism is another one that could impact on any of us at any time unexpectedly. So these are examples of these other crises that are going on, which all link into each other and link into COVID-19 as well, and all of which, just as COVID-19 did and continues to do, are disrupting our lives and disrupting what we think of as, or we thought in the past of, with normal operations. So I've just got, I should have perhaps put them up while I went through this, but those crises, there's the climate crisis, of course, the energy crisis, the migration crisis, hundreds of people traveling, as graphically illustrated here, and the war in Europe that is going on at the moment. Okay, so let's think about the lessons that came out of COVID-19. And I think the really big one that came out of this was that for all types of organization, whether it be industrial, commercial, national bodies, governmental bodies, or international organizations and so on, to survive these hugely disruptive crises requires that organizations have resilience and flexibility. Resilience being perhaps the key word, have to be able to take these unexpected knocks and still continue with their planned operations and so on. And in order to achieve that, of course, have to be hugely flexible. I think what was perhaps the realization that came out of COVID-19 was that in the pre-pandemic era, both resilience and flexibility had been eroded, that we had developed our sort of complacency in the strength and robustness of all our infrastructure and everything that we had in place. Our confidence was misplaced. Procedures that we'd introduced, such as just-in-time manufacturing, where major inventories were actually stored in the vessels as they traveled across the oceans and so on. That clearly impacted on resilience. Operations where manufacture consisted of having parts built in different parts of the world and processes done on them, transferred from one region for a process, transferred back again for a second process, and so on. I understand that BMW had parts going backwards and forwards across the English Channel several times before they were finally installed into a car, and so on. Well, these clearly are highly fragile systems that can be disrupted and don't have natural resilience built into them. And just the hugely extended logistics train, also fragile, and that was really brought home to us, of course, with the Ever Given when that got stuck in the Suez Canal, and how that one vessel being stuck, and how that impacted on the supply chain for months and months, and impacted on all sorts of activities and manufacturing and retail activities, certainly throughout Europe at least. So all of those those procedures which reduced resilience have had to be rethought. And during the pandemic, that promoted innovation and innovative ways of working, and that has continued, but also thinking about to what extent these systems that were set up in a time when we had confidence in our infrastructure perhaps have to be rethought when we recognize that if we are going to be resilient, our infrastructure has to be more robust and more able to take these failings in it that will inevitably happen. So during COVID-19, the immediate responses within organizations we can think about, but what it actually forced to happen were things that we had long anticipated and maybe wanted to make these changes, but they were very difficult, or we thought they were very difficult to implement. And so while we wanted to make these changes, it was very slow in happening. COVID suddenly accelerated that, and we found actually if we've got the will and wish to make it happen, these changes will happen, and they can happen in a surprisingly short period of time. And so the examples I really have here are virtually, firstly, this idea of virtual meetings. You know, here I am talking to you from my office at home in the north of England, whereas 5 years ago, while that was perhaps possible, we would have really it would have been very difficult to actually make it happen. Whereas now, don't think twice. Just say, oh, actually, I'm not going to come to Surabaya. I will do this presentation from my home, and I'm sent a link, and here we go. We're doing it. So those virtual meetings were implemented awfully quickly, and the whole idea of remote working, that you didn't have to be in the office. And lots of people would have liked to do that long before because of the flexibility it brought to your lifestyle. And suddenly we find, yes, we can work remotely. So that was another accelerated trend. And then the third one I have here is the whole issue, because of the climate crisis, of how much air travel we should really be doing. You know, air is one of the air travel is one of those that has a huge carbon footprint, which is very difficult to remove. It is almost impossible to fly. Well, it is impossible to fly jetliners without using carbon fossil fuels. And so it's just going to be many years before we are able to do that. So this pressure to actually minimize our air travel was ever present. We were always conscious that we should be trying not to travel so much by air. And suddenly we found actually we don't have to travel so much. As I said in my introduction, one of the reasons I chose to do this remotely was to minimize my own personal carbon footprint. So those were one of the things that was the immediate response to COVID-19, and that's the accelerated changes that we could see happening. Also, the other sudden disruption of the workforce led to much more flexible working. And that disruption was due to the fact that people were off sick, but also, as I said before, in the longer term, the fact that people were taking early retirement. So that led to organizations having to be much more flexible in the use of their workforce, so that there was a less rigid demarcation of roles. People would do their colleagues' jobs when their colleagues weren't there, and so on. So people took on new tasks, but also the whole idea of making the working day much more flexible in order to make sure that tasks were completed. Working hours were extended, were made variable in order to accommodate the difficulties that people were having at home, as they had to look after their children because their children couldn't go to school, and so on. Forced companies to accept and encourage people to work in a much more flexible and varied way in order to make sure the work got done. So those were the immediate responses. It's interesting then to look and think about how that has been brought forward into the post-pandemic era, and that organizations have evolved those working practices as we go forward, and as the pandemic itself becomes a thing of the past. In this longer term look at what organizations are doing, we can see that one way they've enhanced their resilience is by embedding those immediate responses into normal working practices. So as things have moved back into a less impacted time, we're not going back to the way we worked before. The virtual meetings have become commonplace. I should say that I personally don't think virtual meetings can ever replace face-to-face meetings, just as I wish I was there in Surabaya, because my experience would be so much richer if I was there and able to join you, not only listen to the presentations, but I'm sure I would have a wonderful time in the coffee breaks and over dinner talking to Xavier about wooden boat building and so on, and sharing our experiences and things like that. And all of that is lost when we have virtual meetings. So I don't think virtual meetings will ever replace face-to-face ones, but we can have these hybrid meetings as we're doing today, but we can also alternate, have virtual meetings and then face-to-face meetings and so on. And then the other way that things have been embedded is this whole way of having people's working method being a hybrid one, some of the time working at home and some of the time working on site in their office and so on, and that has become the norm rather than just being an exceptional situation in response to the pandemic. Again, thinking how organizations have taken forward immediate responses into the longer term, certainly in Europe, and there's been as a result of COVID, there's been a huge labor shortage. That we haven't had a labor shortage in the UK like we have now since probably the 1960s or something like that. And so this is partly due to workers making these lifestyle choices about saying, well, I am going to take early retirement, or maybe saying I'm only going to work part-time. I'm not going to work a 5-day week. I'm going to work less than that, a 3-day week or something. So that labour is volunteering to step out of the workforce. But also migration policies have made it much more difficult for people to legitimately travel the world in order to fill vacant positions and so on. So in response to that, what we have found is there has been a positive attempt to diversify the workforce in many industries, and in particular to bring women in to do roles that were conventionally only undertaken by men. So that's one thing that's come out of that. And there's also been an effort to tap into parts of the population that have not really been part of the workforce in the past. So, and this is by enhancing, making stronger recruiting campaigns and enhancing the training of these elements of the population that were not engaged prior. In Europe, we use this word NEETs. which is an abbreviation for not in employment, education, or training. So these are people who are absent from the active economy, if you like, for all sorts of reasons. Well, mostly we should say social reasons to do with deprivation and so on in certain parts of the country. But organizations are trying to engage with this these groups of people in order to bring them into the workforce. And another interesting development is that as a result of COVID, when it was necessary to really think about your workforce and think, how can you help them? How can you make sure that they are able to look after their children, that they are able to cope with the fact that they have been severely ill, and so on. So all that sort of pastoral care that came out of, that was quickly put in place during COVID, has been embedded a little bit more subsequently. So there is a greater provision of psychological pastoral support for workers who are stressed, and this is carried through. And just a more broader one is just the idea that organizations have to have contingency plans for dealing with unexpected developments in their staffing profile and so on. So these are the way that organizations have taken their what they learned from COVID into the post pandemic era. And this is my penultimate slide, but what I'd also like to look at is how the pandemic has really is leading, and I hope continues to lead, to cultural transformations, and that the post-pandemic era will see these cultural transformations really being embedded in the way we all work and the way we operate. So during the pandemic, many organizations were forced to be more collaborative, to work with each other more greatly. This was because of disruption. The only way to get through the disruption was to look to other organizations to help assist them survive what would otherwise perhaps be catastrophic impacts. And now sometimes those other organizations were just the government itself looking for additional funding. Sometimes those were looking to other similar organizations that would conventionally have been competitors, and seeing how by forming an alliance that organizations that instead of competing could collaboratively go forward into the future. So that cooperation between commercial companies, ports, governments, international bodies, and so on, having been formed during the pandemic, is being fostered and taking forward. Also, as a result of these unexpected alliances, companies collaborating, which you would normally think of as being competitors. So those unexpected alliances, if those can be sustained, then other things can happen as well. An example of this is that it enables efficiencies in the logistic chain, through things such as blockchain technology. Now, I'm no expert on blockchain technology, but as I understand it, this because of the open nature of the data, this means that organizations are having to share information, inevitably share information that would conventionally be considered private and confidential for commercial reasons. But if these alliances can be sustained that were formed during COVID, then these new innovative techniques can be technology can be introduced and lead to greater efficiencies. And then the last one that I think is perhaps most interesting as we go into the post-pandemic era is this attitude to corporate social responsibility, CSR. Now, this has always been a part of companies' profile, and often it is presented in the best possible light, as it's seen as a way of giving a positive spin to a company's external appearance and how it's perceived outside. However, during the pandemic, companies had to genuinely, and I'm not saying they weren't doing things genuinely, it wasn't all spin, of course, but companies had to genuinely really engage with those social responsibilities, both internally in how they dealt with their workforce, but also externally in how they worked with other organizations and how they responded in a genuinely societally favorable way to make sure we all survived the pandemic. So that sort of enhanced attitude to corporate social responsibilities and the agendas around these, it seems to be carrying forward and carrying into other crises, the other crises that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, so that there is a greater realization that we all have to work together, all organizations have to work together to engage with, to understand and work towards how we're going to deal with the other crises, such as climate change, such as pollution, such as the energy transition. And I think it's true to say that we can see in our marine technology world, there's huge effort being put into addressing these crises. And I'm sure that many of the papers that you're going to hear through the rest of the day will be related to how we are technologically going to engage with these other crises. So my last slide here is really by way of a brief summary of what my thinking is here, what the stories I've tried to tell here. The COVID-19 paradigm was that you had to expect the unexpected and plan for you knew not what, so plan for the unknown. And although the COVID-19 disease rapidly became a pandemic, its impact merged with all these other much slower developing crises, which were going on in the past through the pandemic and is going on today. And obviously I've given the examples of climate change and the energy transition as perhaps the ones that are foremost in our minds in marine technology. So the lessons from the pandemic were that we have to make sure all our organizations have greater resilience and flexibility, and that this is needed if we're going to absorb these systemic shocks that emerge from crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic. And then finally, while the immediate response to the pandemic was the adjustment to the procedures that organizations did internally, as we move into the post-pandemic era, I believe, and I certainly hope, that a cultural transformation is taking place so that all organizations are putting a greater emphasis on their internal, looking after their staff, their internal responsibilities, but also their external corporate social responsibilities, and making sure that all their activities are to the benefit of society at large and are helping us to overcome these much wider and more slow-moving crises such as climate change. Thank you. That's what I wish to say. Let me stop my sharing.
Thank you, Richard. Big applause to Professor Richard Birmingham. A very insightful presentation. Now we come to a question and answer session. I would like to invite, shall we sit there or we sit here?
Prof. Richard, nice to hear from you. I am the alumni of Newcastle. You listen?
Hello,
are you still with me?
Yes, I'm still with you.
Okay.
Can you still hear me? Yeah, I'm still
Yes.
with you.
Okay. Professor Mazlan is a Newcastle graduate, actually.
Okay.
Long time ago.
Long time ago, yeah?
In 80s.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
87 something, yeah. Okay. Bapak Ibu sekalian, kita sampai pada question and answer session. I invite from the floor to ask questions to Professor Mazlan, Sabi, or Richard, please. Is there any? Silakan. Silakan, Pak. Ibu, silakan sebelah sana ya. Satu, catat dulu. 1, 2, ada lagi di sini? 3. Okay, please. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Vivi from Marine Transportation Engineering. I would like to ask a question to Professor Maslan for the first one, and then the last one is for the Xavier, I think. Yeah. So the first one is related to marine aquaculture, because if what I want to know is about the location
Can you
selection.
open the mask?
Oh, okay.
You can speak clearly
Yeah.
more. Yeah, please. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Related to location selection, location for the aquaculture production, because what is actually the preparation for you to select the location itself? Because for example, for the renewable energy like solar or the wind, there will be a selected suitable location, and then how you define the which location is suitable for this crab, for example, or the grouper. Is there any mapping based on the characteristic of the ocean environment or the bottom level of the environment? That one is the first question.
Yeah.
And then for the about the Albaula, from your experience, actually what you find is the most interesting in the founding of the wreckage vessel. Is there any kind of difference from the maybe 80 or 60 centuries vessel construction compared to the latest wooden boat in this era? Thank you.
You got the question? Okay. You know the question? You understand the question?
If there are differences between 16th century and some other times, right?
Yeah, yeah.
With the current model.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We collect the questions
Yeah,
first,
yeah,
okay?
that's right.
Please, pertanyaan kedua, sebelah sana ya. Ya.
Okay, I'm Zulfikri from Marine Engineering Department. I have a question for Professor Richard Birmingham.
Okay.
And then because of the galleon will sail to Canada, are there?
Are you asking Richard or Sabi? Richard.
Richard.
Richard. Okay. Are you? Do you hear Richard?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay. Okay. Please. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry for Mr. Sabi, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
It's okay. It's okay.
I think so
sorry.
too.
I'm so sorry.
To Sabi.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Because of the galleon will sail to Canada, are there any new technology implemented to the galleon, or the galleon keep the originality? I think. Thank you.
Terima kasih Zulfikar. Ya. Zulfikar ya.
Zulfikri, sir.
Oke. Sila yang ketiga nih. Sila Bapak.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Daniel. I am Nanang Setiabudi. I'm student master program in Marine Engineering Department.
Okay.
I want to ask to Pak Maslan, Prof. Maslan. As we know, protein is important thing from the upstream sector, from aquaculture and capture fisheries. Okay, can you share with us how about the Malaysian government policy in this, especially for aquaculture? How many percent we can use the coast area to use the aquaculture sector, and maybe you can share also about the capture fisheries policy, maybe in a troll policy, maybe how the Malaysian government about the troll policy. Okay. Then for Pak Sabi,
yeah,
thank you. I want to ask about the our fishermen is maybe more than 50% use the wooden boat, and I'm very interesting with the sail technology. How to starting our fishermen to use the sail technology? Maybe you have some experience about about this. Maybe Prof. Daniel also can share with us.
Because
Thank
our
you.
fisherman has left the sailing because they introduced engine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the last one is what different if we use the material between wooden, plastic, HDPE, maybe high density or fiberglass. What different and what the advantage of disadvantage for this material? Maybe this our question. Thank you very much.
Is there any more question? Dari sebelah sini ada? Silakan. Pak, ada satu lagi ya. Ya.
Thanks, Professor Daniel. I want to ask to Professor Mazlan Abdul Ghaffar. Maybe climate Malaysian and Indonesia almost same. I want to ask you for the grouper. What the most dangerous impact of bad or good to the climate change for the grouper? Maybe the refinery and I don't know. It is influence to good to better or worse. Thank you.
Ya, oke. Terima kasih, Prof. Mazlan. Please.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak tadi ya. First question. Okay, Malaysia memang we have the policy for the aquaculture governments. For example, for the environmental approach, where the government, if any farmer want to set out their pond for capturing fish or cage, they have to seek the approval from the environmental department first, DOE, Department of Environment. And of course, it will require certain study by the consultant. You mean that you have to engage consultant in order to study the area in terms of the type of sea bottom, currents, you know, and also the site selection. For example, if you want to develop the pond in a mangrove area, you should have a buffer zone, you know, not to cut off all the mangrove, because mangrove is actually is a protected species, and of course it belongs to the state if they happen to grow on a different state, and of course it controlled by the forest department. Okay, so you need to have approval from the Department of Environment with the consultant appointed by the farmers or the company, and of course the Department of Environment will appoint a panel from forest department from all the relevant stakeholders, agencies, in order to see the proposal, and if everything okay, they will approve, and the company or the farmer can set out their cage or pond in the certain areas, that the chosen areas. Okay, then what anything is what about your question? Yeah. Oh yeah, mapping based on the consultant. You know, the consultant company, they do the mapping, all the necessary thing that required by the DOE, Department of Environment. Then they get approval from that.
Marine planning, marine space planning.
Yes, of course. We Malaysia have this we call it marine spatial planning, which is under the each state government, not the federal. So each state government, they will develop the marine spatial planning in order to identify and to map the feasibility of any project or any the do and don'ts, you know, certain areas that you need to protect. If you have a mangrove and the mangrove is very thick, very productive, and they will try to avoid any development in the mangrove areas. Okay, so those things, you know, we have according to the different state, because Malaysia got 13 different states, and different each state had their own we call it a local authority or local law for the development of the states. Okay, but the Department of Environment must come from the federals. So the federal approvals for the state to implement something. This is a control buffer zone. Relating the second question, tadi, yeah, but about the okay, similar to that actually, depending on the suitability of the area, and of course the production of the aquaculture in Malaysia now is increasing due to the many people like to rear their own spearfish. If they have land, they can develop a pond, for example, or if they have to apply approval, as I mentioned, from the DOE in order to set out the cage. But the percentage of the coverage is quite compared to other places, quite small. For example, in Saudi Arabia, as I mentioned to you, I just visited Nakwa, the largest aquaculture company in Saudi Arabia. You know that each pond is 10 hectares in size. One pond, one single pond. And that single pond, we produce a shrimp, is a Venus maname shrimp, about 45 to 50 ton, waname, right? And each pond, I calculated, producing about 1.5 million ringgit per harvest. And each harvest will take about 18 to 24 hours for 10 hectare pond. You just imagine the scale. So the scale of whole coverage of the pond in Nakwa is similar to the Singapore size. It's huge. It's huge industry in Saudi Arabia producing shrimp. And the cage in the Red Sea, per cage producing 250 ton of barramundi. You know barramundi? Yes. So it's very large scale. But in Malaysia, only focus on a certain area, not so much, but very, very intensive culture, meaning that high stock density for each pond and each cage. Right? And answer that question? Oh yeah, troll policy. Okay, Malaysia is toward try to stop the trolling activities, meaning that they already slowly they are no more renewing the license. When the license completed, no more renewal, and automatically the fishermen will engage to different gears, no longer trolls. So to at the end of the day, we hope that there will be zero trollers in Malaysia, because the policy is now reducing the issuing of the troll license slowly, meaning that there will no more renewal of the new license for trolling, because it's very, very detrimental. At the same time, the government promotes the installation of the artificial reef in the coastal areas whole over Malaysia, except the Strait of Malacca, maybe because of the traffic. It's very, very marine traffic. But in the East Coast, we install so many artificial reefs. That's also include the one that we the encroach boat from Vietnam and Thailand. We capture it, and after all the court case finish, we're not returning to them, but we use the boat captured by our police, marine police, or our navy as an artificial reef for our coastal protection. So we just sank the boat. We fill it with the sand and we sank the boat on through the bottom of the sea to become the artificial reef in order to protect our own coastal resources, and of course to provide to prevent them from coming to our coast area to stick. Yeah. Okay, the third one. Yeah, rearing the hybrid grouper. Okay. Okay. For current bean, Malaysia has successfully developed, artificially produced the hybrid groupers. Is the marriage between the giant groupers and the tiger groupers.
so becoming hybrid groupers. Hybrid groupers, we call it. The tigers and the giant groupers locally, the tiger is also local. We cross them, genetically cross them, and we produce the hybrid groupers. Because these hybrid groupers, they are fast grower, they are more resilient to the environment changing, and they are not performing, the sex reversals. Because in natural habitat, the groupers, when the environment are changing, they change their sex from male to female or female to male based on the temperature, physical stress or thing like that. But this hybrid groupers was, we produce in hatchery. We're not producing from the natural habitat. So we managed to breed them, cross hybrid them, and producing the hybrid groupers, which are so far not reported yet about the phenomena of sex reversals in hybrid groupers. They just, we grow them from the hatchery to the cage, or to the production or grow out cage, and we sell them straight away. It's very high price and very good. Yeah, taste, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I answer all the questions. All right. Yeah, Pak.
So now is my, oh, sorry.
Oh, Pak. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, yeah, so to answer your first question is that, yes, there is a significant change between the shipbuilding technology of the 16th century and more recent times, okay, like I would say starting in the 18th century to nowadays. Mostly the proportion of the hull, in the 18th century, they were twice as long, according to the beam, so you have an idea. And also then the construction techniques, they were also very different, mostly related to the setup of the frames, mostly, okay? But there are many more aspects and details that are very, very different, but that will take a long time to explain. We will need another seminar just for that. Then, the second question is if we are going to use any modern technology on board. Well, as I said before, the ship is going to be as it was, with nothing, except for navigation devices. We are going to use a GPS and a chart. Okay, because you have to know that in the 16th century, they didn't have any chart. Not at all. Yeah, but they did it by guessing very much. You have to understand that these people, they were very, very experienced because they got on board at the early age of 8 years. With 8 years, they used to go to Newfoundland across the Atlantic Ocean. So these people, they knew what they were doing, because they had a huge experience that we don't have. We will get lost without any charts. So we will. And then, your two questions. The first one is if the sailing techniques. Well, they should keep the sailing techniques because the fuel is getting more and more expensive, and we might not get it at all in Europe with the conflict. The gas is happening with the gas. Okay, so I would advise that every fisherman should keep the knowledge of sailing with the wind just in case. It's free, it's clean. So might as well use it. And wooden boats versus fiberglass. Okay. Well, I prefer much more wooden boats because wood is very sustainable material. Also, it requires, the more wood you use, the more it demands good forestry management. That's important. Sustainable forestry management. It should be associated to boat building. Also, when the life expectancy of any ship and no matter the material, is an average of 30 years. You know, I learned that from a seminar a year ago in France. So they explained that, you know, no matter the material, is 30 years for any boat. So after 30 years, a wooden boat can go back to Mother Earth, like by itself, you know, without any cost. And then a fiberglass boat is very, very expensive to get rid of it. It demands lots of energy. It's very expensive. So, and it's not good for the environment at all, not to build it and not to destroy it. So why not going back to natural techniques that are very friendly? Of course, it demands more time to build a wooden boat. It's more expensive than a fiberglass boat, usually. But in the long term, you know, it may be cheaper. Yeah.
Daniel, can I come in on those?
Please.
On
Yes,
those
yes, please,
questions?
Richard. You can add. Yes, Richard, please. Yeah. Okay.
I was just interested in the question about how to reintroduce sail technology to the fishing communities where it has already been abandoned. And while I obviously support the idea that those who have that skill should be should try and keep it, there is an issue around those who have been working with motorized vessels for many years, and where the skill is to some extent lost, or is completely lost. So that the question really is how to reintroduce it, and I think that is an interesting question. I would say the answer to that is that, you know, the motivation, why would the fishermen want to reintroduce it? And obviously the motivation is because of the expense of fuel. So as the fossil fuel and energy is going up and up all the time, in order to reduce that cost to the fishermen, clearly to work with wind would be advantageous. So there is a motivation there for them to do it. The demotivating factor why they won't want to do it is because it is so much more difficult to work with a sailing vessel. It is not so maneuverable, but in port you can't work with it easily. When you're actually doing the fishing operations, you know, you can't. Well, it has been done under sail in years gone by. It is much more difficult to do under sail. So to me, it seems that the way to reintroduce this concept is to play on the fact that it's got benefits in saving money, but remove the disbenefit of difficult to operate. So you don't say, look, change back to sail. You say that, you know, use sail as an auxiliary source of power. So you keep the engine. As new boats are built, perhaps could be a smaller engine, but you keep the engine, and for the difficult situations coming into port, maneuvering while doing the fishing operations and so on, you work with the engine. But when you're making the passage to the fishing grounds and coming back and so on, that's when you would use the sail. And if the wind is not favorable, you might use the sail as an auxiliary. You'd have the engine going, but still the energy would be reduced. The fuel would be reduced if you were sailing had the sails up as well. So that would be the way to encourage it. But then also, as you'll be working with fishermen who are not used to working with sails, rather than trying to encourage going back to the traditional rig which would have been used in the past, you try and introduce a much simpler rig which would be easier for fishermen to learn how to use instead. And these days, you know, if you just look to yachts, you can see there's all sorts of huge simplifications in the way the rigs are operated, and in particular the idea of furling sails. So your sail furls around, but whichever sails you have, or perhaps you only have one because that keeps it simple, but you make that sail, it doesn't have to be taken down and put up. You make it furl into the mast or against the on the stay that it is operating on, and so on. So it is very simple to remove the sail and to bring it out again when you want it. And then actually the fisherman, it ceases to be a problem. It becomes a fairly straightforward, you know, simple thing to do. If you, with your permission, Daniel, can I just share my screen again? Would it be okay to share my screen briefly?
Yes. Okay.
So if I just show you this one. So this is a photograph of a fishing vessel that I took in Hobart in Tasmania, so closer to you than it is to me at this moment in time. So this is a commercial fishing vessel, and if you look at the hull and the wheelhouse and so on, I know it doesn't look like the Indonesian fishing vessels, but it could look like an Indonesian fishing vessel if we wanted to. But that is a vessel that is working today now in commercial fishery, but it does have auxiliary sail. It has a big engine, and it does, as I've said, it operates with the engine when it has to, but when it doesn't, it can use a fairly simple rig, or just a rig that's similar to many yachts, but it is all furling, in order to furling both in front, beside the mast. The mainsail furls beside the mast. If you can see my cursor just here, that's the furled mainsail, and this is the jib. The foresail is furled against the yard. So a simple rig to operate, and organized in such a way that it doesn't interfere with the working deck, so the fishermen can still work as they would normally on the deck here. But that is, and clearly that is a modern implementation to a boat that would, in not so many years ago, just have operated under power alone. So I just give that as an example of how that reintroduction of sail can be made by keeping it simple and not trying to persuade people to return to only sail, but to say use the sail for its benefits, but use the engine when that is more convenient. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Bapak Ibu sekalian, saya kira tambahan dari Professor Richard Pimentel cukup jelas ya. You can actually introduce sails into fishing boats using simple rigs, but still also using smaller engine as well. Ya. Oke, waktu saya masih ada kah? 8 menit. I can open next session. Ya, silah Pak. 1, 2 ya. Oke, sila Pak. Please. Automatic identification system for fishing boats.
For fishing boat in Malaysia and in Spain, maybe in Europe, how the government regulated the fishing boat to equip with automatic identification system. Thank you.
Mau ada satu lagi pertanyaan, silakan.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. My name is Adif Gayu from, I am an undergraduate student from Ocean Engineering Department. I want to ask to Prof. Mazlan. I'm currently doing research to find innovative mooring configuration for floating offshore fish farm. And our goals is not just about to maintain the structure in a certain environmental criteria, but also to minimize the volume of reduction or deflection of the fish cage. Is there any criteria or standard to regulate about the maximum volume of reduction of the fish cage due to wave or currents in Malaysia or maybe in scientific?
Yeah, okay. Mungkin boleh jawab ya, Pak. Okay, the first question tadi about the automatic ice. Okay, okay, very good question. Kebetulan Pak ya, UMT we have one center of excellence under Faculty of Maritime Management. We call it MATREC. Yeah, MATREC actually is a center, it's a research center for the maritime faculty that develop and collaborate with the global company like IHS, something that based in London. They have a lot of data on the ship or type of ship, and we managed to have a collaboration, and we use the satellite to facilitate us to identify the fish surrounding the Malaysian waters. So we can trace the movement of the ship, surrounding the Malaysian waters.
How about a fishing boat?
Fishing boat that with ACE, that equipped with the GPS, not all fishing boats. Only certain fishing boat that registered to the fishery department, they have a special, because because Malaysia government and the fisheries department, they have a special program for sustainable fishing, capture fisheries, especially on the pelagic. You know pelagic, the tuna, just like in Manado, no? They have a tuna fisheries, jet mackerel fisheries, that very high demand in Malaysia. So we try to help the fishermen by tagging them with the GPS equipment, and we monitor the ocean colors through the satellite in order to locate the plankton, the food, the live food materials in the oceans, so that the highly correlated phenomena between the density of the planktons, right? Plankton, yeah, and also the fish density, the pelagic fish like tunas is highly correlated. So where the food is blooming, the fish also there. So we're helping the fishermen to sustainably, feasibly capture the fish based on the ocean colors in the presence of the high density of our plankton. That's between the project with the sighted fishermen with a big boat. We are talking about the deep sea fisheries. Yeah, in the EEZ, more than 200 nautical miles from the water lines. Yeah, that's the thing lah, right? Yeah, about the criteria of the fish cage. Okay, all right. There are two things here. First, need to consider the oceanography, the sea bottom. Is it suitable? How deep is the waters, and the wave force, the wave energy that you. It's no point when you set the cage in the area with high energy. We had to find the least energy of wave and the very deep waters with a good bottom, no coral reef area, just a sandbar, for example. Then try to identify, because cage culture invite predators from outside. In the mostly like if you set out the cage in the coastal area near to the shore, near to the waterline, near to the land, you invite mostly the sea otters to wreck your net and take all your fish. This is a problem. This is a security problem, and how to try to understand the population of if there is no population there is fine. For example, in the Red Sea, I just mentioned from Saudi, they have a problem also because the shark is wrecking their net, because Red Sea got so many shark. Yeah, the tiger shark. Yeah, the tiger shark also wrecking the neck. Yeah, and fish net. It's a problem. Yeah. So this is the thing that we need to study biologically, physically, and of course the character of the water lah, the currents, the monsoon, so many things lah. So those are very important consideration parameters to be studied first in order to set out the massive one. With the small one, no problem, you can set. All right, okay. I hope I can answer the question. Yeah.
Masih ada waktu atau sudah habis? Sudah habis katanya. Sudah habis ya? Okay, baik. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have to conclude our sessions. Please join me to give big applause to Professor Mazlan, Sabi, and Professor Richard Benehan. Thank you, Richard. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. It's been a pleasure to participate in this opening session of the conference. I found it most interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers. Saya kembalikan ya.
All right, now as the discussion and the keynote speaker session is finished, we will also give a plaque of appreciation for our amazing keynote speakers. I would like to call upon Pak Herman to give out the plaques. All right. Firstly, I will call Professor Mazlan Ghaffar to give the plaque. Okay, one more. All right. You're welcome. The next we have Mr. Sabiar Agote. All right. Lastly, we have Professor Richard Birmingham through the online session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll pick it up when I'm next in Surabaya.
All right. All right. Thank you, Professor Richard Birmingham. Terima kasih Pak Herman untuk waktunya. Okay. Now we have finished all the keynote sessions and the discussion sessions. We will continue for the break. We will have lunch and praying sessions. But I would like to remind to all the presenters that the parallel session starts at 1 p.m. and you can have the lunch at the hallway next to the registration booth in the morning. I will give a brief of the detail of the parallel session. We will have the participants will be divided into 7 rooms of parallel sessions. You can see all the details in the program book or on our website. There will be 1 moderator and 1 liaison officer for each room. The room will be dispersed throughout the marine technology faculty, and you can check all the rooms in the map that is provided in the program book. If you have any trouble, you can talk to the committees, and you can take the certificates after the parallel session at the registration booth. All the participants have to come back to BG Munaf here for the closing sessions, and we will announce the best paper and presenters at the end of this event. For now, we can have our lunch. Thank you, everyone.